So do animals have rights? I mean, I've been introduced as like an advocate of the rights of animals, and indeed I am. Some things we do know. We're not going to find the answer to this question in the media, and I know there are people from the media here, and I'm grateful for them for being here. But whatever we're going to find in the media, an answer to a difficult question like this is not going to be found in tomorrow morning's paper or tonight's evening news. And we're not going to find the answer in opinion polls. We'll find that what a percent of the people in your country believe in animal rights. That's an interesting thing to know, but it doesn't answer the question, do they believe truly? Is what they believe true? Is what they believe well-founded? We're not going to find the answer to the question, do animals have rights, by just appealing to our unexamined traditions. In America, it was an unexamined tradition that we could own people. They were called slaves. We could trade them, barter them. We could beat them with impunity. It was very difficult to get convicted for killing a slave in the United States during slavery. The reasoning went like this, that if you killed a slave, then you were destroying your property, and no person in the right possession of their mind would destroy their valuable property, so anybody who killed a slave must have been temporarily out of their mind. And so therefore you were not guilty of murder. So it was very difficult to, unexamined traditions. Only by thinking independently, only by taking that muddler step, only by beginning the journey, saying, this is a serious question. This question affects every aspect of my life. From the moment that I wake up till I go to bed. It affects what I eat, it affects what I wear, it affects what I brush my teeth with, it affects every aspect of my life. In some ways, more than any other question you can think of, this question just trickles down into the details of one's life. And so we have to think independently. And that's what the invitation of philosophy is, as I come here as a philosopher. The invitation of philosophy invites us to think for ourselves, to muddle along, if you like, using logic, being factually informed, freeing ourselves from prejudice. And that's the purpose of my remarks, really. Not to try to convince anybody that animals have rights. I don't think anybody's going to have a Saul becomes Paul conversion experience here because of what I say. I don't think that's going to happen. But what I can do is encourage people, invite people to take the journey. When philosophers think about rights, we make a distinction between legal rights and moral rights. Legal rights are rights that we make. I mean, if you have a right to vote here, it's because the people in your country have decreed in the appropriate fashion that you have the right. If the appropriate people hadn't created the right, you wouldn't have it. Same would be the case in my case. And they differ from nation to nation. Not everybody has a right to vote depending on where they live. Not everybody has a right to freedom of religion wherever they live. Not everybody has a freedom of assembly, freedom of speech wherever they live. It depends on where you live and when you live there. So they're not universal, and they certainly are not equal, these legal rights. On the other hand, when we talk about moral rights, as in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights for Human Beings, what we're saying is we don't make these. There isn't some legislature that can make a moral right or unmake a moral right, and they don't differ from nation to nation. If people have a fundamental right to bodily integrity, then they have their right no matter where they live, when they live, who they are. That doesn't mean that everybody respects it, doesn't mean that their government respects it. On the contrary, we know all too well that the government doesn't always respect the fundamental rights of its citizens. But that doesn't mean that they lack that right, it just means that they lack having their right respected. Our moral rights as human beings are universal and they are equal. My right to life, my right to bodily integrity, my right to liberty is no higher or lower, no stronger, no weaker, no different than yours, or for that matter, for any other human being. Any serious advocate of human rights, and I include myself among those, and as an advocate of human rights, believes this. Human rights are universal, equal, and not made by us. Now, here's why I think rights are really important. There are two things about rights that make them very, very important in our moral thinking. The first is that our integrity must be respected, our freedom, our liberty, our bodily integrity, our life must be respected. And it's like rights serve as the protection against the excessive freedom of others. The excessive freedom of others. And it's as if then these rights are like a no trespassing sign. Here's where my body begins, and here's where your freedom ends. Here's where this is my life, not yours for the taking as you please. This is my freedom in my life, and so long as I don't violate anybody else's rights, leave me alone. And in particular, the government, leave me alone. Keep out of my life. That's what we mean that's why our rights are so important. It's the protection against the excessive freedom and intrusion and interference of others, including the government. Not just other individuals, not just your neighbors, not just your enemies, but also the government. And the second thing about the importance of animal rights is that, or it should be individual rights, I think, is we cannot justify by violating animal rights because we benefit. We cannot say, in this case what we're saying is that rights are trump. And that's from the analogy in bridge. And if you know the game of bridge, as I'm sure some of you do, yes, still play bridge? If we imagine that we're playing a game of bridge and that the first person plays the queen of spades, second person plays the king of spades, third person plays the ace of spades, and you, the last player, you have no spades. Diamonds are trump. You do have the two of diamonds. In bridge, that two of diamonds beats the queen of spades, the king of spades, and the ace of spades. That little diamond is more powerful than any other card in that particular hand because diamonds are trump. So if we think of it in terms of the analogy with the bridge game, then, if we think of the queen of spades representing the social custom, the king of spades representing personal benefit, the ace of spades representing the public good, these are all very important values. My benefit, the group's benefit, the public good, custom, tradition, all important, but never to be advanced. The public good, social custom, personal benefit at the expense of violating the rights of the individual. So when we say rights are important, we mean first that they serve as a protection against the excessive interference and freedom of others into our life, including the government. And secondly, we mean that respect for the rights of individuals, the most important card in the game of morality, that respect for the rights of the individual trump other important moral considerations. But do animals have rights? If they do, then they have that protection that a no trespassing sign represents. If they do, then respect for the rights trumps other important goods. But do they have rights? And to answer that question, we have to ask two kinds of questions: factual questions, which ask what is the case, and moral questions that ask about what ought to be the case. The main factual questions are pretty simple, it seems to me. They ask, are any animals like us physically? Are there any other animals that are kind of made the same way we are? And in particular, are there any other animals that have a central nervous system and a brain, that kind of physical structure? If we look around the world, do we find any other animals like us physically? And are there any other like us mentally? Or do any other animals have a psychology? Are they psychologically present to the world? In terms of physically, the answer is obvious, sure. Do any other animals have sense organs? Do they have central nervous system? Do they have a brain? Yeah, mammals do, birds do. They're clear candidates. Do mollusks, do clams? I don't know. I don't think so. But I'm willing to kind of leave that question open. All I want to say, for our purposes, all we have to agree on, is that there are some animals that really do resemble us physically. They have the structure that makes experience possible. They have the structure that makes experience possible. Fish too, perhaps. Are any other animals like us mentally? There are various possibilities. One is the idea that there is nothing going on in the mind of an animal. There is no mind. It's completely empty. nothing happens. There are no sensations. There are no desires. There are no emotions, no beliefs, nothing going on. Your cat, your dog, nothing going on behind those eyes. Another possibility is that while there's nothing going on, there's more than nothing going on, but what's going on is very little. Just a little bit going on, nominal in terms of sensations or desires or emotions or beliefs, just a tiny bit going on. The other possibility, of course, would be, when you actually stop and think about it as a muddler, you actually ask the question, there's a lot going on in those minds there. I mean, it's not like they're robust in terms of their sensations and their desires and their emotions and their beliefs. Now, what's the most credible position here? That nothing's going on, very little's going on, or there's a robust mental life, psychological life that's going on in the case at least of mammals, at least of birds, perhaps of fish? Well, I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that they have a robust mental life. Look, they don't worry about investments in the stock market. I grant you that. They don't worry about, the promotion at the job. They don't worry about whether they're going to be late to make the plane that's flying to Las Vegas. They don't worry about things like that. They don't have beliefs about things like that. But that they have beliefs and desires about what's important to them, I think that anyone who has lived with an animal understands that. These animals are living beings who are in the world, aware of the world, aware of what happens to them, and what happens to them matters to them, whether you care about it, whether I care about it, whether anybody cares about it.